Now I'd like to invite a very special guest to round things up. I request Najam Sethi to share the key points from today's discussion. I'm sure he doesn't need any introduction, but Najam Aziz Sethi is the founder of the Friday Times and Vanguard Books. He's the former chairman of the Pakistan Cricket Board and the former Chief Minister of Punjab, Pakistan. So, Mr. Sethi, I request you to share the key takeaways from today's very long discussion, which you have patiently been waiting for a long while now over here.
Thank you, Ekta. I must tell you that every minute of this conversation has been awesome, fascinating, so much information, so much to learn. I am struck by this, and it's amazing the determination, grit that these women, these young women, these sports persons have shown, trying to reach to the top in very difficult circumstances, starting from their homes, their families, then outside their homes, then the discrimination and hardships they face on the ground, the coaching or the lack of it, the lack of funding, the bureaucratic hassles. But most of all, the fact that still in our part of the world, women sportsmen are few and far between, and there's not much support for them, both at the institutional level and at the popular level, partly because of culture and partly because of built-in discriminatory practices. These stories are heartbreaking and heartwarming at the same time. I was just thinking that there are so many other issues that we haven't discussed today, possibly because of shortage of time, but they were raised, and perhaps another session is called for. I mean, two very important points that were raised. One, of course, the fact that women generally are objectified, treated as objects. When you want to sell a car, you want to put a woman in front of the car. And similarly, over here, when sponsors want sportswomen to be objects, because that's what attracts sponsors. Not everyone can be a good-looking, sexy star, but that's what they're looking for. And that is terrible, which is where institutional thinking and institutional funding has to come in. So therefore, that is one dimension, the corporate dimension that one should talk about and raise awareness about. The other, of course, is sexual harassment. I'm particularly concerned about harassment. I remember when I first became chairman of the cricket board in 2014, I think it was, or 13. On my very first day, they put a report on my table. And I said, what's this? They said, well, this is a report that was submitted to the previous chairman, and he didn't want to take action on it. So there's a lot of interest in the media about it. So would you like to have a look at it? And I must tell you that it was a fascinating experience for me, because I learned so much from that particular report. And I'll just raise two issues. Number one, the report was about a couple of players or would-be players in a remote place somewhere who were training, but they were not selected. The men, the coaches, everybody was male. They were not selected. And they accused the coach or the selectors over there of harassment. And they said we weren't able to repay the favors they wanted from us. They were sacked by the relevant organization on the ground there. They complained, the media picked up their case. The PC, the cricket board, authorized a report on it. The investigating team was 2 women and 1 man. The one coach, the female coach, the male coach, and then of course there was the chairperson of the Pakistan Cricket Board, who was a woman dealing with women's cricket. And she was a progressive woman. And she wrote a very damning report condemning the girls and basically holding them responsible for the mayhem. Basically saying that the girls are blackmailing the coaches into accepting them. And when I read it, I was reminded of the innumerable cases that come up where Even when women are right to make certain accusations, they are poo-pooed away, and extraneous reasons are given. And I called the chairperson in and I said, look, you're a woman, you should understand, even if what you say is true, this is a very damning way of looking at issues that come up with women. And I would expect you to be a little more sympathetic to these girls, even if what you say is true. And I can't imagine that everything in this report is true, because a lot of it is hearsay. And she was adamant. She said, no, they have to be punished. They're completely wrong. And I just felt very bad, because I thought, whenever a woman accuses a colleague or anybody else of harassment, first of all, they're afraid to accuse them, because they know the repercussions will be terrible. Nobody will believe them, that they'll all believe the men. And the men will always come back and say, she's not a good worker, she doesn't do this, she doesn't do that, these accusations are all nonsense, and so on and so forth. And I was struck by the fact that there was very little sympathy amongst the two women who were in part of this committee. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I asked them to go and re-examine their findings. I actually said to them, I want you to soften these penalties that you've imposed on these women, because this is not just an issue of merit, there is much more to it. And you're not being sympathetic enough to the situation. And I wonder, when all these girls today were talking about the hard climb that they've had to make to get to where they are, and the other millions of other young women who want to take this route but find the obstacles are very, very powerful against them, arrayed against them. It's going to be a long, hard struggle, so there's no doubt about it. And every person here today is not a small heroine. They are extraordinary women for what they've had to do. And it's a very emotional thing for me. And I just wish that such stories were more common in our media, so that at least we could rise to the occasion and try and salvage this situation. It's a terrible situation. I mean, I'm aware of the shortcomings in our own cricket board, where not sufficient support has been given to our women cricketers. It takes time to understand some of these realities, and the institutional setup is not geared to make you sympathetic to a sport that has no sponsors, where the obstacles are starting from the home. And even when women cricketers get to the top, the fact that they want to retire early because of family reasons, or because of myriad of reasons. And so it's a tough battle. And so therefore, I mean, I'm absolutely awestruck today. It's been an awesome experience. I have listened to every word these young women have uttered today. And, they're so brave about it. They smiled their way through this whole thing. This must have been an extraordinary experience for them. And for the others who are waiting or milling around wanting to take this course. I mean, on the one hand, the fact that there's so little stardom in it right now. There's so little money in it right now. Unlike the men who become stars and become millionaires. I can't imagine Sana ever becoming a millionaire. I think she may make a little bit of money now that she's doing some commentary. But the fact is that it's a terrible situation out there. And I think these stories need to be told. And I would urge the organizers of this wonderful webinar to have another one, to take up some of the other issues that haven't been discussed boldly. We need to hear about these experiences. We need to find solutions to them. And so I'm very grateful. I really am, truly am very grateful for having been given this opportunity to listen in today. It's been an extraordinary experience, and I salute all of you. And I hope webinars such as this to educate us will continue to take place. I just have one small point to make. If you could have another webinar along the same lines, you would probably have a book on your hands. If you could transcribe these stories, go in the hands of a good editor, add some more, you would have a great book on your hands, which could be translated and such a book would find funding anywhere. I mean, I would publish it without any funding. I think that would be a great thing. It would be a great contribution to the heroic efforts of all these young women. Thank you so much for inviting me today. I'm very grateful to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sethi. The manuscript is going to be on your table in October.
Thank you.
You have to live up to your promise.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Absolutely.
you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. And like you said, there are so many more stories that are there, and we haven't had the time to hear all of them. This is just probably a very small segment of all that. Bina, would you like to come back on and share any last thoughts before we end it? And perhaps for the next event next month, if you have any, any hint you want to give?
No, I just want to say, Ekta, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for conducting this event so nicely. And I know we went over time, but the stories were so fascinating. It was so amazing. And I just wanted to add to a couple of things that Najam said. I think I'm really glad that he highlighted the point about determination and how these heartbreaking stories and how the women they're smiling their way through it. And I think that's really fantastic to notice also. The other thing I wanted to just add one point, that you're absolutely right. Women are objectified, and there's a certain definition of pretty or sexy that that goes up, that is there through the media. But I think that we should not get into those narratives and not follow that. I mean, I think all of us here do agree on that. But I think that the idea of pretty or sexy or whatever it is, and this fair and lovely, and all the skin whitening creams and all what Nisha talked about, if you don't, about tanning and all that. So I think that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and I think all of the women, I think all sports women are beautiful and amazing. I just wanted to add one more thing about one of the things that we wanted to do with this seminar, also webinar, is we've taken up the issue of health as public health as an issue, and we are talking about, we have in our last few things, we've talked about COVID and the public health crisis and the importance of regionalism. I just want to flag the point that sports are also a public health issue. Women playing sports are a public health issue. And for our next webinar coming up at the end of August, like you said, Ekta, in the beginning, with SouthAsia Peace Action Network, Sapan, which has so many people involved, we are trying to do a webinar at the end of on the last Sunday of every month. And on the last Sunday of August, we are going to have one on road safety as a public health issue. August marks 10 years since Tariq Masood and Mishuk Munir from Bangladesh lost their lives in a bus crash. And we're going to talk about that. And Kanak Mani Dixit, one of our founders, has started a spinal injury institution in Kathmandu. And we have, I forget which singer it was, but somebody started a spinal injury hospital on a highway in Pakistan as well. And we lose more people in road accidents than we do to any other cause, I believe, as far as I know. I might be wrong. So I think that we can end this thing here. Thank you so much, Ekta, for conducting, and for and we end up wearing almost the same shade of pink, Ekta. How's that?